Nation. The hobby is the people. Weekly news and interviews. It's your number one source. Sports Card Nation. The hobby is the people. Sports Card Nation.
Welcome to another stocked and loaded episode of the Sports Card Nation podcast, the show that brings you all the important hobby news, discussions, debates, opinions, info, and interviews with key hobby and sports dignitaries. Also, if you're good, you know we are going to give away something. Now, here's the guy that wanted the cards more than the gum. John Newman.
What is up? Episode 110 of Sports Card Nation. Glad to be back with you. Happy Friday, everybody. Got a great show for you today. I know I say that probably every week, but I believe it every week, and definitely believe it this week. Great gentleman on the program today, Mr. Bob Kendrick from the Negro League Baseball Museum. And man, we're going to cover a lot of topics, and Major League Baseball and Rob Manfred's recent decision to recognize the Negro Leagues as a major league, and so all those stats are going to count. I'm going to ask, Bob, is this going to affect, are we going to have more of those former players get into the Hall of Fame now? How does this affect, even financially maybe, some of those players? And we're going to talk about, of course, I can't have him on and not talk just briefly about Jackie Robinson, but we're going to talk about some of the history of the game and the great players and what that league meant to Major League Baseball, how important it was, and how it's we should never forget the past. It's a bridge to the game we know today. And, we're going to talk about the campaign he came up with, the Tip Your Hat campaign that really went viral, just really took off by storm, was on national media, late night television, and really garnered some attention, and rightfully so. Something I feel very strongly about as a big baseball fan, former player too, not in the majors, obviously, high school and younger. But, the past is so important. If you follow me on Twitter, or you follow the show on Twitter, each day I'm highlighting a card from that Negro League's Centennial set with a little bio and a write-up. And we talk a little bit about that. And I love doing that because as much as I did already know, I'm learning even so much more. And anytime you can learn in the hobby, that's a good thing. So happy to have Mr. Kendrick on the show. Great conversation, if I may say so myself. Don't miss it, coming up here shortly. So with that being said, without further ado, let's get this thing started. Time for this week's product releases. All right, let's talk about this week's releases, starting with January 15th. We have 2020 Leaf in the Game Used Multi-Sports. On January 20th, 2020, Panini's Contenders Football. Also on the 20th, 2021 Topps Archive Signature Series Active Player Edition Baseball. And so kind of just a few product this week, but there's always a few surprises between either bump backs or reschedules, but that's at least all on the original schedule. So sort of a quiet week, but I'm sure things will change as we get closer to the start. A lot of the new baseball products are going to start coming out. We're less than a month away from flagship 2021 baseball.
Sports Card Nation Podcast is your weekly hobby and sports podcast. Now on tons of platforms including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, and many more. Listened to in 44 different countries globally, Sports Card Nation is one of the most interactive podcasts around, providing great content, giveaways, and some of the hobby's best interview guests without time constraints. Thousands can't be wrong. We want to thank all the wonderful listeners around the world, our awesome guests on the show, and our tremendous sponsors making us what we are today. Remember, without you, there's no us.
We lost some figures in the sports world, unfortunately, this week, including a major personality. Let's start with that first. Tommy Lasorda, longtime manager of the Dodgers, pitched for the Brooklyn Dodgers, not very successfully, 0-4 in his career, and actually, little known fact, was sent down to make way for a ready Sandy Koufax. But his career as a manager, much better. 2-time World Series champion, 2 times Manager of the Year, Hall of Famer in 1997, and in 2000 led an underdog USA team to a gold medal at the Olympics. Tommy Lasorda gone at 93. The hockey world lost legendary coach John Muckler. Coached in the NHL over 40 years. Was a head coach for Minnesota, Edmonton, Buffalo, and my New York Rangers for 3 years. Won the Stanley Cup in the 1989-90 season with those Edmonton Oilers. He died age 86 on January 4th. And former Steelers fullback, age 52, Tim Lester, died on January 12th. He was the lead fullback for Hall of Famer Jerome Bettis. Spent 4 seasons with the Steelers. Was selected in the 10th round of the 1992 draft. Tim Lester, rest in peace.
We love our listeners. Without you, there is no us. We care about your opinions and feedback and invite you to reach out to us on any of our social media accounts. On Instagram at Sports Card Nation Podcast, Twitter at SportsCardNati1, or email the show at sportscardnationpc@gmail.com. We don't ask for much, but if you really like the show, give us a shout out. Tell your friends or give us a follow on our social medias. If you enjoy the show, please give us a positive review on iTunes or any of the platforms you are listening on. Thank you.
I know the chunky that left these junkies. Newman! Open the door, Newman. I know you're in there.
Hello, Jerry. All right, it's time for Newman's Rambling, where I select one question I get each week and answer it on the air.
John, you seem like an astute man.
Thank you, Mr. Walken.
Maybe you can help explain something to me.
Well, I'll give it my best shot. All right, today's question actually comes from about 3 people, like 2 people on Twitter, someone on Instagram, asked pretty much the same question, so I figured that many people are asking it, I might as well be my Newman Says question on the show this week. So the question actually is, basically people were asking me, a lot of the other content creators kind of post or, talk about their goals for the new year. And if you've listened to me long enough, and it's not that I don't believe in goals, but I just kind of, if we're doing well, I just grind hard and, let sort of the chips fall where they may. I'm very, very blessed at where I am personally, professionally, in my life with family. So I don't take any of that for granted. I don't like to set the bar way too high. But, I mean, goals are important. I don't want to make it sound like you shouldn't set goals. I come from a coaching background where, before the year again, you set goals, milestones, things you want to accomplish. And so, it may be sort of vague answers, but I'll talk about some of these. And some of these are going to be personal as well, besides the hobby, because that's how my mind works. I'm more than just a podcaster. I'm married, I'm a dad, and so all my goals are all jumbled into me. And so I mix them all together. So I'll try to stay on point. And cover kind of all aspects of me. So from the selling side, the sales tax dealer side, my goals are to continue to buy great purchases, great collections, great deals where the ROI is there. And I will say this, 2020 was incredible in some of those purchases that I made. I bought stuff at great prices and was able to sell a good portion of it and do quite well. Along those same lines of business is just to continue to not open wax like I did years ago. And I've sold a lot of wax. And that's, to me, I figured that out. Like, wax sealed is so much better ROI than wax open. So, and some of those deals I bought were other people's losses. They opened 6 boxes or something. They were disappointed, just wanted to recoup some of that money back. And so, it sounds harsh, but probably buy others' losses and avoid those myself by not opening as much. So that's the business side. The personal side, continue to be a good dad there for my son. As he, just turned 21 on Wednesday. And, be a good husband, a good employee, stay employed. I'm married 22 years now on December 31st. So stay married to 23 years. Stay healthy, do the right things, be proactive, wear our mask, wash our hands. We want to stay healthy, do the right protocols to help other people too. It's more than just about ourselves. Podcasting, stay the course. I mean, where the show is, I'm very, very pleased. Is there's room for improvement? Sure, but very happy. If we have the same downloads in 2021 as I did in 2020, I'm good. I'm very ecstatic about that. Matter of fact, we moved, you probably know by now, or maybe you don't, we moved our non-guest smaller show, Hobby Quick Hits, over to the same side of the house as Sports Card Nation. And best thing I've done. Probably one of the best decisions I made in 2020. And that's catching up, kind of fast to Sports Card Nation with downloads. People have been very receptive. I've gotten great feedback. I've had people say, I didn't even know this show existed. Thank you for bringing it over. So, it's not exactly on the same par yet, but it's really trending in that direction. And so now we have 2 shows a week, Hobby Quick Hits on Wednesday, Sports Card Nation on Friday, both, one easily over 4 figures, and the other one approaching that now. And, so maybe, 2 shows in the 4-digit rotation, I'll be ecstatic, beyond ecstatic with that. And the fact that we're even that close already, this quickly, and you embraced that show. Some of you never heard of it and embraced it rather quickly. I think there's been 4 episodes. And so thank you to you folks out there who have done that and have made that show even more listened to than it already was. And I think I covered all the bases there. I don't PC a lot, so I don't have a lot of PC goals. I'd love to get a 48 Leaf Jackie Robinson. I could do it, but I'd probably be in trouble with the wife for spending that kind of dough. We're not going to do it, obviously. I'm kidding. That's a purchase I don't make on my own accord. But, someday maybe a lower grade one. But, just keep on keeping on. I root for people, so I hope everyone out there, hits your goals or things you want to do and, that sort of thing. So I root for everyone, including myself. So let's all have a great 21 together.
Five, four, three, two, one.
Commence interview sequence.
All right, real honored to have my next guest on the One of One Sports Card Shop guest line. He's the president of the Negro League's museum. He's a Hall of Famer in his own right in the Missouri Hall of Fame, class of 2014. And this is, we're in 2021, but we just got completed with the centennial year of the founding of the Negro Leagues. And I'm glad he's made some time for us. Welcome, Mr. Bob Kendrick.
John, man, it's a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me. I'm still trying to figure out how I got into the Missouri Sports Hall of Fame. But they let me in, and that's all that matters in the end. I guess they don't really ask you how, as long as you get there.
Listen, you're in. They can't take it back. Let's put it that way. So, but I'm sure it's all joking aside, I'm sure it's well deserving. Everything I know about you, you're a great individual. So, even if it's on being a great human, you should be in on that alone. So, but congrats on that. So again, 2020, we're only a couple days out from it, but it was the centennial year of the Negro League Hall of Fame of the Negro Leagues, and I'm a baseball kid and grown up in Brooklyn, and I learned early on kind of what Jackie Robinson sort of became my guy, being a kid from Brooklyn and hearing my dad, who basically lived at Ebbets Field, tell the stories, and he got to meet him and what he meant, not just to the sport of baseball, but to the city of Brooklyn, and not just to the city of Brooklyn, but just society as a whole. And I know this is all, all this stuff, but what his career off the field probably meant more even than he did more off the field than he even did on it. And he's a Hall of Famer on it. And so from a really young age, where I'm going with this, from a real young age, it wasn't lost on me, the Negro League history and the importance of it, and to what we know of baseball today. And I'm one of those guys, we can't forget the past, even though we're living in the current, what we see today is a direct result of everything that happened in the past. And, Major League Baseball recently, a couple of weeks ago, long overdue, quite frankly, Mr. Kendrick, acknowledged the stats and the Negro Leagues as a major league. And again, long overdue. It's probably something they should have did sooner, but, at least they did it. Better late than never. I just wanted to get someone in your position, what does that mean, and your feelings on that decision by Major League Baseball?
Well, the good thing about it, John, and please call me Bob.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm thank you.
and the good thing about it for me was that I had time in advance to kind of sort through my emotions on this, because I was privy to the fact that this was coming. And thanks to Major League Baseball for cluing me in and kind of keeping me abreast every step of the way as it got near for them to make this historic announcement and to include me and the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum's voice in the press release. It was something that was very exciting. By the time it all happened, I was elated. And I say that because when I first caught wind of this, I was like probably most baseball fans who did not know about this 1969 commission that had blatantly dismissed the Negro Leagues as exactly what it was, a major league. And I call it blatant dismissal because it wasn't a mistake. They knew exactly what they were doing. And they made that decision, that egregious decision, to not recognize the Negro Leagues. And so, but I didn't really know about this. And so unless you dug deep into the annals of baseball history, most of us didn't know. And so when I finally caught wind, they started to write about this, and then it was starting to question what Major League Baseball might do in consideration to this. And my initial position was, having known so many of the players as I did, these were very self-assured individuals. John, they knew how good they were, and they knew how good their league was. So they were never seeking validation from anyone. They didn't feel like they needed validation from anyone. And really, that was kind of my stance, too. I'm like, well, we don't need you to validate us. We know how good we were. But then when I started to rethink my position, and I'm glad to know that in my old age, I'm flexible enough to assess and reassess, I started to think more in line with what this meant for historical merit. And the more I embraced that notion, the more excited I became about it. And I started to understand that this is not validating them from the standpoint of whether or not they were good enough to play in the major leagues. It is validation of what they did as this incredible group of talented owners and ball players who forged a glorious history in the midst of an inglorious time in American history. So that level of recognition and that atonement and acknowledgement is what now kind of stands out for me. Even beyond the statistical data that was used, to help try to quantify the Negro Leagues, it is that historical significance that kind of now I embrace and celebrate. And by the time we got to the announcement, like I would say the majority of the people, because there are still some questioning what Major League Baseball did. But by and large, most people are genuinely excited and applaud Major League Baseball for doing what should have been done, correcting a long overdue, egregious, oversight. Again, oversight is being too kind. And because, again, they didn't have to do anything, and that's why I tip my cap to Commissioner Manfred, because he did what others could have done but didn't do. And, as you mentioned, better late than never. And as I've said on a number of occasions, and as it's been said well before me, man, it's always the right time to do the right thing. And Major League Baseball did the right thing. And to talk to the families of Negro League players and a few Negro Leaguers themselves, they were overjoyed that they were being seen, that they were seen for what they had accomplished. And so it was an exciting and historic day for all of us who are part of the Negro Leagues family.
Yeah, well said, Bob. Thank you. And you said it poignantly. The players didn't necessarily need this to justify in their minds or many others of being professional ball players. But I think the proof's in the pudding. The argument I've heard from pundits or baseball historians or whatever you want to call them is, the black players weren't playing against the likes of the white players and the pitchers. Well, that's a two-way street. Like you can't make. I'm not even saying that's wrong, but you can't be right one way and not right the other way. And then just the same, those white ball players weren't hitting off of Satchel Paige and competing with the Josh Gibsons and all those great players. And so if you're going to use that as an argument, you can't use it just to make your side and not have it work both ways. So whenever I hear, it's not something I say, but whenever I hear someone kind of use that, as a reason. I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, you hear what you're saying? Like that's a two-way street. So, and
I think, John, it's because we, in some ways, have been conditioned to believe that if it didn't happen in the major leagues, then it didn't happen.
Yeah.
So the natural assumption is that the major leagues were better because we really didn't know about this other league. And so the belief is that the greatest baseball players who ever played this game played in the major leagues. And to some extent, they're right, but it was the greatest white players who played in the major leagues. The greatest black and Hispanic players played in the Negro Leagues. And both of these leagues were very much professional. I tell people all the time, the only difference between the major leagues and the Negro Leagues is that the major leagues were better financed. They had more money. They had more stadiums. Maybe their roster sizes were a little bit larger, but primarily they had their own stadiums, and the Negro Leagues would have to rent those stadiums because by and large, they didn't have their own stadium. But when we talk about quality of play and we talk about the athletes who competed, and you'll always hear me reference these players in the Negro Leagues as great athletes because, John, they could have played anything. You know, you talked about Jackie Robinson in your league.
4 or 5 sports.
Yes, and baseball
All-American.
was his weakest sport. Yeah, baseball was his weakest sport. Now. So that's
true.
The kind of athlete that called the Negro Leagues home. And so, yeah, it's just difficult for people to accept that, though, because all you know is the major leagues, and you've always had a place where you could turn to find out virtually everything about the major leagues. And then all of a sudden you're hearing about this other league that you knew virtually nothing about. And really, until the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum emerged, you didn't have a place to go learn about these legendary players. And even beyond the legendary players, this great American story of triumph over adversity. And so it's hard for people to reckon with the fact that there were these two leagues operating simultaneously to one another.
Yeah, and let's be honest, the Negro Leagues existed because those gentlemen wanted to play baseball and the major leagues would not allow them. It's not like it wasn't the fact that, hey, we're going to compete against your league. We can't play in your league. We want to play ball. So this is what we have to do to get it done. I mean, that's, like you said, that's triumph over adversity in itself.
And that's what we celebrated all year last year.
Yeah.
We go back to Rube Foster leading a group of 8 independent black baseball team owners into a meeting here in Kansas City. As a matter of fact, literally just a stone's throw from my office at Historic 18th and Vine, the Purcell YMCA is where they met. And out of that meeting, now it'll be 101 years on February 13th. That's where they established the Negro National League. And when he established the Negro Leagues on that February 13th date, he boldly proclaimed, "We are the ship, all else the sea." And John, it was the Negro League's Declaration of Independence. It was as if he was sending a resounding message to Major League Baseball that a new player had arrived on the scene to be reckoned with. And that was the genesis for this league that would operate for 40 years from 1920 until 1960. And it would not only change the game, but it would change our country. But in the end, it would give Major League Baseball some of its biggest stars. After these leagues, demisal of these leagues, and the integration of our game beginning in 1947 with Jackie Robinson and this incredible pipeline of talent that came from this less than league, this incredible talent, that would go in and really, when we look at, John, what happened from 1947 until about 1960, Major League Baseball saw its largest influx of talent at any one single time span as it had in the history of its sport. And again, it comes from this league that somehow was considered less than. So that that's not the truth. And I remind people constantly, and I hope that God continues to bless them with great health, that the two greatest living major leaguers to date and I don't think you'll get any debate about this. Willie Mays and Henry Aaron.
Yep.
And both of them come out of the Negro Leagues. Man,
Yep.
that's the kind of talent that we were talking about that was there in the Negro Leagues.
No doubt. And many and great point with Willie Mays and Hank Aaron, and hopefully we still have them for many, many years to come. And arguably just the two greatest ball players, period, you know.
And they're going to be in everybody's top 5.
Yeah. No, but they should be. And if they're, all you have to do is do your research, and this stuff comes out in the wash. And again, going to this decision, many of those Negro League players are in the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Yes.
There should be more. Sports Card Nation is going to take a real quick break, but we'll be right back after this message. Let me tell you about Iron Sports Cards and Collectibles. They're your number one source for all your PSA submissions. They offer various service levels at the lowest prices around. They even provide the card savers your cards need to be submitted at no extra charge. Their elite status helps improve turnaround times, and their chat rooms keep you abreast of your subs and the status of your cards. What are you waiting for? Contact Rob on Facebook, on Iron Sports Card Group. That's Iron Sports Card Group on Facebook. Or get a hold of Rob on Twitter at Iron Sports Cards. All one word, at Iron Sports Cards. They'll take care of you. We're glad to be back with Bob Kendrick. Do you think this decision, long overdue as it is, will open the door to having, unfortunately, probably many posthumously, but getting in to the Hall of Fame as they probably should have been already?
I hope so. The election that they had, John, in 2006, where with the induction of 17 Negro League players, unfortunately left out my dear friend, the late, great Buck O'Neil, and my other dear friend, the late, great Minnie Minoso. That induction in 2006 was supposed to be the end all for the Negro Leagues. That committee had the task of inducting all who they believed deserved Hall of Fame consideration. It ended with 17. Unfortunately, it left quite a few people who I think have very valid cases for Hall inclusion, including Minnie Minoso, and obviously Buck O'Neil for everything that he contributed to the game of baseball. When we look at it strictly from a playing perspective, I think there's still a great case for a number of guys, including many. John Donaldson, for instance, where the Donaldson Network has unearthed over 400 verifiable wins for the great lefty pitcher and over 5,000 verifiable strikeouts. So this is not conjecture. They've gone back and all the data is there to prove that this happened. And so maybe it will lead to the possibility of opening the door. We don't know yet. There always remains hope. And part of our job at the museum has never really been to try to determine whether these Black and Hispanic players were better than their white counterparts. We wanted to make sure that they were included in the discussions. When you had these discussions about our sport, that they weren't excluded, that they were part of these discussions. But we're also there to kind of help advocate for those players who had never really been acknowledged the way that they should, or given the real consideration that they should. And if you recall, had it not been for Ted Williams using his Hall of Fame speech in 1966, who knows if Negro League players would have ever gotten in. I think if you're going to point to one moment that kind of led to this movement, that they belong in the National Baseball Hall of Fame, because it's not the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. That's the thing that people always kind of get misconstrued. It is the National Baseball Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
So if you were good enough, I don't care what league you played in, you deserve the consideration to be there.
Yeah, I'm guilty of doing that myself, and I'm only an hour away and go there 5-6 times a year. Just, I think muscle memory.
Yeah, most of us do. And so we advocate on behalf of And hopefully by educating the public about this story and about these courageous athletes, perhaps it will now with this announcement reopen that door. It remains to be seen. But what we do know, if things work out the way that we anticipate it will, Buck O'Neil and Minnie Minoso will be on the Golden Era's ballot this year, in 2021 for consideration. And I hope the stars align and both of those wonderful individuals get their proper recognition and what they really deserve to be in the National Baseball Hall of Fame. Minnie, I know how badly he wanted it. It's a shame that if it does happen, it will happen now after he's passed away. Buck obviously deserves to be there. No one has contributed to this game in as many ways in which as Buck O'Neil did, and did it with such grandeur and greatness. And so we hope that it happens for him as well. But it still remains to be seen.
Yeah, I hope so too. And again, both mentions they're well deserving and long overdue. And it will be kind of bittersweet when that day comes that they're obviously not here to enjoy that accolade. But for their families, I'm sure it'll be a bittersweet for them too. But at least joyous in the sense that a family member and someone they admire has got the ultimate accolade as they should. And also with this decision, I know there's been programs to help some of the living members of the Negro Leagues, financially. Does this have any effect there whatsoever or eventually? Or
I don't think so, because when you stop to think about where the cutoff point was, John, it ends at 1948. It goes from 1920 to 1948. Very few players who played in that time span are still with us.
Yeah.
And so, as you mentioned, baseball had been providing a pension for Negro League players up to a certain time span who could prove that they had played in the league, whatever it was, 3 to 4 years. And so there were a handful of players who were already getting a pension from Major League Baseball. And sad to say, those players are all passing on. You start to think about, we were challenging ourselves to start thinking about guys who were still with us, who played, in that time frame right around integration of our game and shortly thereafter. And it's not very many. Willie Mays comes to mind. He played with the Birmingham Black Barons in 1948. He's 17 years old at that time. And Reverend Bill Greason, who was a teammate of Willie Mays, is 96 years old in Birmingham. And so it's just not many of those players still with us who played in that time span.
Okay. Well, I thought it was worthy to ask, and you want the best for everyone that paid their dues, and definitely wanted to breach that subject. How much with the Negro League Museum, which you had, and the National Baseball Hall of Fame, is there communication between those two entities at all?
Oh yeah, no, we've long been great friends with the National Baseball Hall of Fame, and this goes back for years. And so both entities have always been supportive of one another, and the Hall has been tremendously supportive of the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. And our job, I think both institutions, is to promote the great game of baseball. But you really got to include the Negro Leagues. You have to, or you should. And so I think they have a vested interest in wanting fans to understand the complete history of our game. And so they've always been right there every step of the way since we started this museum way back in 1990. And we've shared stuff with one another. And fortunately, they provided some stuff for us. And, because they probably have more stuff than we do. But he focused on the story. And really, John, it was the story that had escaped us. And so you can't define the Negro Leagues by statistics, and you can't define it by stuff. It is this very powerful, compelling, inspirational story that we bring to the forefront that had escaped the pages of American history books. And to me, that is what drives this for us. And that's why fans who come are in awe of what they learn. They really are. They are amazed by what they learn. And John, quite frankly, they are a little bit dismayed by the fact that I just now had an opportunity to learn it. You do leave questioning, why didn't I know this during my formal education? Because it has that kind of historical significance. Moving beyond baseball, this is American history. And the more majority of us don't know this story. And so, it's exciting. And of course, with Buck's role there at the Hall of Fame and the Lifetime Achievement Award and the statue of Buck there inside the National Baseball Hall of Fame, there is this bond. There's a natural connection between the two of us.
Yeah, and I was glad. I was hoping that's what you said. A little nervous when I asked that question, knowing some of the backstory from years past, like you said, with some committees of yesteryear, and as it should be, those two entities are integral parts of each other and should at least hopefully be on the same page and sharing. They share a history, like it or not. That's just the way it is, and the way it has to be. And
I think at one point in time, Major League Baseball was a little ashamed of its own history in terms of its exclusion of these Black and Hispanic players. And so it was a little bit difficult to embrace this story because that meant you had to acknowledge what you had done. And through the years, though, I think it started to very clearly understand that this is such a great American story. And that's what I have to remind people all the time. The conditions that created a need for a Negro League are shameful and sorry. Yeah, because these players should have been able to play in this game, and everybody should have been able to take the field together if you were good enough. But there's nothing sad or sorrowful about the Negro Leagues themselves, what they did in the face of this adversity. And then when you start to understand all of this talent that ultimately helped Major League Baseball become major. I'll never forget the Reverend Jesse Jackson said something that I thought was so poignant. He said Major League Baseball really didn't become major until 1947, when it opened its doors to all the great players to take the field and compete against and with one another. And as an athlete, and I think that's why you see this, great athletes appreciate other great athletes.
Yeah.
And John, the only way you can measure how good you are is by competing with and against the very best. And so the superstar major leaguers were never really concerned about integration. Ted Williams wasn't concerned about integration because Ted Williams could play. Now the average major leaguer might have been concerned because of self-preservation. You're trying to protect what you believe is yours. And if you allow this influx of Black and Hispanic talent in, I might lose my job. And that's the nature. You can understand that. But, so that's what this is really all about. And I think Major League Baseball ultimately embraced that and started to understand that embracing the Negro Leagues was good for our sport. And we've had a great working relationship with Major League Baseball for quite some time, and now the Major League Baseball's Players Association. And I see that relationship only evolving with this announcement, this recent announcement. I hope that this will only be the framework for an even more grandiose relationship and partnership as we continue to promote and celebrate the heritage of our sport.
Yeah, no doubt. Going to step aside for a quick break, but we'll be back with more Bob Kendrick. Pastime Marketplace offers a line of durable graded card cases made for collectors who want high-quality graded card storage that is virtually indestructible. Their cases are waterproof, dustproof, airtight, and designed to protect your valuable collection. Check them all out at www.pastimemarketplace.com. Protect your best with the best. And remember to save 10% off your total order. Use the promo code SCN10. That's capital S, capital C, capital N, 10 for 10% off your total order at pastimemarketplace.com. Sports Card Nation is back with Mr. Bob Kendrick. We talk about integrate. Many of the black ball players were reportedly better. Many said that saw Josh Gibson play said he was better than Babe Ruth and others. And so like you said, and you mentioned, what Reverend Jesse Jackson was saying before. I think, but that was only first starting with Jackie Robinson and then Larry Doby in the American League. The full influx of who should have been in the major leagues wasn't there yet. That was the beginnings, but it wasn't really the where it should have been. And again, long overdue. But it wasn't like they just said everyone that's worthy come win a job, and that's why we know the history we do. And that's the thing. Another thing you touched on. This is bigger than the game of baseball. This is part of the history. You mentioned maybe Major League Baseball feels a little bit guilty or self-conscious or whatever, of their operational past. But you know what? It is what you can't change the past, but the first point to move past something that said, hey, we made a mistake. It's in our history. We're not proud of it. We're not that person or entity, that league anymore in that form. And here we are today. And we wish it never occurred in the way it did, but it is what it is. And we're doing what's right now to be right and not be wrong.
And I think that's the thing. History is one of our best teachers, both good and bad. And I think that's what we kind of embrace. And that's why cultural institutions like the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum are so vitally important. Because, John, what we should understand is that there are gaps in the pages of American history books. And that there are so many who have contributed to the greatness of this country, and their stories have never been properly told. And the story of the Negro Leagues is just one example of those great stories. And it's a profound one, and so we should be celebrating this history. It's recognizing what caused this history, but then celebrating what came out of this story. It is one of the great American success stories. Matter of fact, it embodies the American spirit, unlike any story, I think, in the annals of American history. You won't let me play with you, I'll just create my own. Man, that's the American way.
It is. It's not taking no for an answer. Hey, I love doing what I do, whatever it may be. In this case, we're talking about playing baseball. Maybe it's opening a business. Maybe it's inventing something, and no one wants to give a patent. Right? You nailed it right on the head, Bob. It's hey, you say no, I still say yes, and I'm gonna find another way to get it done.
I'll show you. And that was their spirit. And I think, John, when people come to the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, that's the thing that is so prevailing. Because I do think a lot of our guests come expecting to be introduced to a sad, somber kind of story, because they understand that this story is certainly propped against the backdrop of American segregation. But we don't treat the story that way. It's a celebration. It is the celebration of the power of the human spirit to persevere and prevail. But you have to understand that these athletes never cried about the social injustice. They just went out and did something about it. And they did it as well as anybody ever did it. They played this game as well as anybody ever played this game. And as you mentioned, some would argue that they played it better, that it was a far more exciting and better brand of baseball than what was being played in the major leagues, which is one of the reasons why you had such a significant white fan base that had started to move over to Negro Leagues baseball. The style of play was just polar opposite. And so you went to a Negro Leagues game, you were going to be thoroughly entertained. And it doesn't mean that you weren't going to see good, sound, fundamental baseball. Because I think sometimes when people hear the entertainment value, they say, well, they weren't playing the game the right way. That's kind of the catchphrase now, the right way. Well, the right way must mean the major league way. Doesn't necessarily mean it was the right way. That means it was the major league way. They were playing the game a little differently. they played the game with a little flair, and so, but they also played it with such a high level of skill to coincide with that flair.
They were enjoying the game that they loved to play. I don't know if you're going to criticize that. I won't even argue with you because it's just a stubborn argument that no one's going to, at least in theory, will win. But every player's different. You got so many different personalities. You got some players just quietly. I even think of football, right? Jerry Rice, he scores a touchdown. He flips the ball to the referee and goes to the sideline, right? Another wide receiver, another player doing a 10-minute dance. Everyone's got it different. And that's what makes us individuals as people, not just athletes, but as people. So I don't see, as long as you're not hurting no one in the process, maybe you're not taunting or belittling someone else in that stuff. I don't see the big deal.
And here's what you would get back in that era. Number one, the late great Buck O'Neil would say that the major leaguers would oftentimes accuse them of showboating. And as Buck John would say, first of all, if you got something to show it. Don't show it. But, if a guy dove in the hole and flipped it behind his back to start the double play, that's what they would call showboating. Today, it is considered a SportsCenter top 10 highlight every night of the week in baseball season. But as Buck would say, it's only showboating when you can't do it. It's like someone bragging about something before they do it and then they don't deliver. But if you deliver the goods, why not be proud? Hey, I did it. I'm enjoyed the moment. Well, again, the great athlete, and if you can utilize that athleticism to create something special, well, why wouldn't you? You go back and look at the great Ozzie Smith. Ozzie Smith made plays that no mere mortal could make. And he got the balls that maybe he might be given an error on a bad throw, but other people would have never gotten to that ball.
The left fielder would have it.
Exactly. Exactly. And so that was, if you think about the Wizard, that was Willie Wells. And that was others from the Negro Leagues that had this incredible athleticism that they weren't afraid or ashamed to display to use it to help their team win. And that is not showboating. That just means you got some tools that everybody else don't necessarily have.
And probably wishes they did. So jealousy is a huge factor when people complain about things. It's probably number one on the list why they're complaining. But and you make great compare those guys, Willie Wells, those laid the groundwork for the players to come after them, and that'll always be the case for years to come. And it's important. I know it's important to me and many others to not forget that past and keep talking about it and giving those players their proper due and credit and acknowledgments and whatnot. You, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, with the 2020 being the centennial year of the Negro Leagues, you started a Tip Your Cap campaign. I want to talk about that. I on the low end of the scale, participated in it and did pay my respects to the league. And but this thing really went like viral. Which as it should. I'm very happy that it did. Whether you watched late night television or news or SportsCenter, everyone did. I don't want to say everyone, but many people really got on board and acknowledged this across not just athletes but celebrities alike, and it was nice to see, and it really kind of spread like wildfire and definitely gave some positive attention to the league as it should be. Kind of speak to kind of how did that come about? How did it get born, so to speak?
When we announced the year-long celebration for the 100th anniversary back in February, we were very fortunate. Major League Baseball and Major League Baseball's Players Association, on February 13th, we go back into the Paseo YMCA where it all started. And on that historic date, they announced a $1 million joint contribution in support of the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. But, John, we also rolled out a year-long celebratory plan for the 100th anniversary. Less than 30 days later, everything came to a screeching halt with this pandemic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about no doggone coronavirus. And all of a sudden, this pandemic had basically derailed all of our plans. And so what was initially supposed to take place was that on June 27th, we were going to do this Tip Your Cap celebration in stadium with fans and players, as part of the first ever National Day of Recognition for the Negro Leagues, where all 30 teams were going to honor the Negro Leagues on one given day. They were going to wear our patch that we created for the 100th anniversary. Well, it became very apparent that the June 27th date wasn't going to happen. And at that time, Major League Baseball and the Players Association were still embroiled in some rather contentious negotiations on when and if they were going to bring the game back. And so now it was about trying to figure out a way to salvage some aspect of this celebration. And really, it came out of an act of desperation because we needed to do something. We didn't want to just lose this entire celebration. And so it was my brainchild. And then I called my good friend Joe Posnanski, the great writer. And Joe is a dear friend of mine. We call each other brothers, even though we're not biological brothers. But I mean, that's how close we are. And anytime I've got a crazy idea, I always vet it with Joe. And so I called Joe. I said, Joe, what do you think about an idea to see if we could do a virtual Tip Your Cap to the Negro Leagues? See if we couldn't get maybe a few dignitaries and former and current players, to take a picture or video of themselves and post it to a website that we would create. Well, I'm waiting on him, John, to say, Bob, that's a ridiculous idea. We can't do that. We don't have enough time to do that. And instead he says, I think that's a great idea. And then he called his business partner, a guy named Dan McGinn. Dan is a tremendous communication strategist out of the D.C. area. And we vetted the idea with Dan. And Dan thought it was a great idea. And the three of us went to work. About a week before the scheduled Tip Your Cap was going to happen, we went to work. And John, on June 29th of last year, we rolled out this campaign called Tip Your Cap to the Negro League. And when we rolled it out with 4 U.S. presidents tipping their cap. President Obama, President Clinton, President Bush, and President Jimmy Carter, General Colin Powell, transcending legendary athletes like Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson and Billie Jean King. And as you mentioned, those late night talk show hosts, Stephen Colbert, Conan O'Brien, and Henry Aaron. And the list just started to increase almost every day. But John, when we went literally into outer space and got a tip of the cap from astronaut Chris Cassidy, who was aboard the International Space Shuttle, I knew then that we had something. And this thing just went viral. You don't set out to say, oh, I'm going to create a viral campaign. These things just happen, but it resonated with people. And as you know, in our sport, there's nothing, more special that a major league ball player can do. It's the ultimate show of respect than just a simple tip of the cap. And then to start to see little league kids, of all colors, tipping their cap.
Yeah. Well,
I see you. I see you, Negro Leagues, and I acknowledge you and I appreciate you.
It was beautiful to watch. Like I said, I did my own video on I'm no Jimmy Fallon by any stretch of the imagination. But, you mentioned it is the ultimate sign of respect. I remember as a little leaguer when I got into the All-Star game and you line up on the line, right? And they say your name and you take your cap. You learn at a very young age the significance of that. And it's,
to see all the major leaguers get engaged and get involved and and just to see this groundswell of support that came from this and the level of engagement in and around it. And for those who will be listening to the podcast, you can go to tippingyourcap.com where all this stuff is housed, and you can see some of the incredible salutes that were given by some amazing, amazing people. It was pretty special. It'll be something that I'll remember for a long time, but really, man, it came out of necessity. I can't say that it was this brilliant idea that I was sitting on the entire time, but it turned out to be something pretty amazing.
And great that it did. And you appreciate it more because it took off and you had no idea. And, it's something like you said, we can always look back on and, glad it happened. And, it's meant, I like to say it's meant to be, right? And
I think that's the resilient spirit of the Negro League. So it was meant to be. And I think as challenging as 2020 was for so many of us, and really for the world, those of us who will come out of this, I think we'll all come out of it as better people, because we will learn something. When you're in the midst of it, you don't realize that you're learning something, but we'll learn something about ourselves and we will grow as a result of. And for me, as dismayed as I was to see so much of our celebration interrupted by this virus, it made us kind of dig a little deeper and figure out ways to kind of keep the celebration relevant, to keep it going. And you just have to feel good about that. And we were able to do that. So the level of engagement around the history of the Negro Leagues and the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum is as high as it has ever been before. And John, fortunately for the museum, during these challenging times, we saw our level of individual contributions skyrocket. People, even if they were going through challenges themselves, found a wherewithal to want to support the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum and its 100th anniversary celebration. And man, that just fills me with tremendous pride. It warms my heart tremendously. And so, I want to tip my cap to all who continue to support the work that we're doing with this organization.
No, it's a great point. Sometimes it's the beauty of America and people. When chips are down, the people rally together and help each other out. We could always use more people like that. But like you said, I think when we get on the other side of this pandemic, I think hopefully, like you eloquently said, we're better off and people are better and learn some things along the way, even though it's a difficult time. Another quick break, but we'll be right back. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. They give you the tools that are needed to allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. And they distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast. It's why I use it and why you should too. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. Glad to be back with Bob Kendrick from the Negro League Baseball Museum. I'm not a medical person, but we do have some positive vaccine stuff going on. At some point we're going to get on the other side of coronavirus. Are there going to be events planned to celebrate, later than they were originally scheduled, obviously due to corona? But I mean, is there things still going to occur, hopefully, once we get under normal circumstances?
On February 13th, which will mark the actual 101st anniversary of the birth of the Negro Leagues, we will roll out our plans for the continuation of the celebration under the banner of Negro Leagues 101. And so, yes, it is connected to the 101st anniversary, but we're also, John, preparing to launch basically a national 101 level kind of collegiate course to educate the people about the history of the Negro Leagues. As I sometimes half-heartedly joke that the 101 courses were the only ones I passed when I was in college. When we got to the 300 and 400 level, man, I was in trouble. And so we're creating what will be the genesis for a year-long educational initiative. And you'll see some amazing things that will come down the pipe to help people understand elementary information and history of the Negro Leagues, just as if it was a 101 level course. And so we've got 2 virtual reality projects that we will unveil this year, and a plethora of programs. We're still looking at events with gatherings of people. I'm still not sure that we'll be able to do that, but we are looking at target dates to bring back the Hall of Game and hopefully an end of the year 101st anniversary gala and what would be Buck O'Neill's 110th birthday celebration that would take place here in Kansas City. And so those things are on the calendar. We'll just have to see how this virus, and then the psychological aspect of what will be left, the psychological residue from this virus, that I'm still not 100% sure that people will be totally comfortable getting into large groups again. It may not be until 2022 that you start to see that kind of ease, and people are more relaxed about and feel safe about being in large gatherings again. So right now, the group gathering things, we're kind of playing it by ear, although we'll have tentative dates on the calendar for those kinds of things. But you can rest assured there'll be any number of programs and virtual events and other celebratory things that we'll do during the course of this year to keep the party going.
Yeah, and like you said, while the pandemic's not a good thing, we got to keep plugging. It's the American way. We find ways to still do things and show that spirit. And I myself, even on the podcast Twitter, each day I'm highlighting a card and player from that set. And it's funny. I get a lot of people say thank you for doing this, and it's like, I'm learning along with, a lot of people say, hey, man, I'm learning. And I'm like, I'm learning too. We're both learning together. It's a beautiful thing. And it's easy to do. I don't really want, I appreciate you saying that, but I'm not doing it so much for that. It's just, it's fun. It's good. And if someone learns something about, as I do, there's many of the players that I weren't as familiar with, and it's filling in those gaps and details that I did not know.
Exactly. And John, I can't even overstate how important that is to us at the Negro League Baseball Museum. We're trying to help people get introduced to this story and learn about this story. And the more arms and legs that we have out there advocating this history, the better it is for this institution that is anchored here in Kansas City. But as I tell people, the Negro League Baseball Museum is Kansas City's gift to the rest of the world. It's just headquartered in Kansas City. But we need as many arms and legs out there continuing to promote the legacy and this very rich history as much as we possibly can. And that's why it's so important that kind of work that you took to heart and started to do. And I'm glad to see so many people respond so positively to it, because it is really important to us. And so I absolutely thank you for that.
Well, I coming from you, I appreciate it. I would have did it without that, but hearing that from you just makes me feel obviously wonderful, and I appreciate it. We're on, I believe, card number 142. It's 184, and so we'll keep continuing, and started with card 1, and it's been a fun process for me too. As much as I knew, I've learned more than I already knew. I don't even know how to quantify it.
And Greg Kreinler's art is just breathtaking.
Yeah, amazing. It's almost like looking at a photo in time. Greg's been on the show too, and great guy, and fellow Brooklynite as well. So we have that common bond. But I appreciate your time. I want to give you, number one, I wanted you to talk a little bit about the Negro League Baseball Museum. I've never been there. It's something on my list that's definitely going to happen at some point. Like you said, we under the circumstances, things are a little difficult. But for those who haven't been there, kind of, in short form, I guess, kind of describe the museum and what someone would have to look forward to when they get there?
Yeah, well, we celebrated our 30th anniversary last year, but John, we started the project in 1990 in a little one-room office. And we've grown the institution now from a one-room office to what's about 10,000 square feet of exhibit space. So it's not an overly large footprint, but man, within those 10,000 square feet is a lot of great information that brings the story of Black baseball in general to life, and specifically the professional Negro Leagues. And it is literally a nostalgic journey back in time. And so the story is told through an amazing collection of photographs, artifacts, great scripted pieces. There are multimedia displays of two theaters, and we're continually adding to the collection to tell new stories. And of course, the centerpiece of the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum is the Field of Legends. And the Field of Legends, and let me preface by saying I'm biased. Let me make that perfectly clear. But the Field of Legends, in my estimation, is one of the most compelling displays in any museum anywhere in the world. It features 10 life-size bronze sculptures of Negro League greats. And John, they're all casted as if they were in position, as if they were playing a game.
I've seen pictures. I can't wait to see it. I'm sure pictures don't do it justice, but even the pictures are amazing. So
yeah, and all the statues represent the first group of Negro Leaguers to be inducted into the National Baseball Hall of Fame. And I can tell you, by the time you go through the museum experience and the field is the very last stop, you feel it. Yeah, you really feel it. There is this triumphant kind of feeling. And I'll never forget, we talked about him earlier, my dear friend, the great Ozzie Smith. He was here in 1997 when we opened the new museum, our permanent home. And Johnny, when he got out on the field, he said it was one of the eeriest feelings he ever had, because he knew he stood on the shoulders of those immortal giants to become the Wizard, to have an opportunity to play the game that he loves and to become a Hall of Famer at it. And it wasn't lost on him. And it was very emotional, very emotional. He was almost moved to tears because he got it. And the thing that Buck O'Neil used to always so eloquently say is rare in our society that we celebrate the people who built the bridge. We always celebrate those who cross over the bridge. But at the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, we celebrate the bridge builders. We celebrate the people who made it possible for Jackie Robinson and then others to cross over and enter into Major League Baseball and pursue their careers. And that wasn't lost on him. And it's not lost on any of the other players who now come and visit the museum. And that's why I say it's a very powerful, compelling, emotional, awe-inspiring salute to these very courageous athletes, again, who forged a glorious history in the midst of an inglorious time in American history. Their legacy deserves to play on. There's not many of them now. And in the not so distant future, there won't be any left to attest to what these leagues were all about. And so it's so vitally important that the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum is there to keep their legacy alive.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And like you said, we're unfortunately that's life. We're going to lose everyone, and it's nice to know that the museum will stand forever. So to let folks know, generations from now, even when we're gone, and hopefully that's later than sooner. Absolutely. But it's a beautiful thing.
That's why we're all working so hard. We want to leave something that will stand the test of time, that others will have an opportunity to come here and learn. And John, for our young folks, I think be inspired by passion and the pride and the perseverance, the determination, the courage that these athletes demonstrated in the face of adversity. I remind our guests all the time, our story itself is not about the adversity, but rather what they did to overcome the adversity. And that's the real story, man. And that story never goes out of fashion.
Yep. No, it's very, very true. And I want to tip my cap to you, Bob, for coming on. What you do with the museum and keeping those legacies alive, that also needs to be acknowledged as well. And I want to thank you for coming on the show and giving some of your time. I know you're busy. And kind of the final word here for you. Give out any of those Negro League Museum, the website, any of that stuff where people can learn more. And learning is very important.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. And to learn more about the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, please visit us on the World Wide Web at nlbm.com. And if you're so inclined, you can follow me on Twitter at nlbmprez, P-R-E-Z, and Instagram, the same name. And the museum's Twitter name is NLB Museum KC. NLB Museum KC. We're constantly updating folks with what's happening in and around the museum and dropping historical facts and other interesting tidbits about the history of the Negro League. So please, and online you can become a member of our organization. You can shop in our online gift store where there's some incredible buys inside that gift store, and it all helps keep the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum afloat.
Yeah, very important. And again, I can't stress enough, knowledge is power. Learn about, if you enjoy the game you're currently watching, I know it's off season, but the current baseball, we wouldn't have it without, there's more to the story than what we just see today. And it's important to learn what that is. And you guys provide that. And I thank you for it.
Well, it's an honor for us to do this work, man. And we appreciate the opportunity to have this kind of platform to kind of share the work that we're doing. And, it means a great deal to us. So thank you so much for having me on the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob. One of One Card Shop offers a tremendous breaking experience, great customer service, and they're constantly pulling fire. Steve and his family take care of you like one of their own and treat you right. Anyone can break, but no one treats you like One of One. Come check them out on Instagram at one_of_one_card_shop. For all the hot breaks, get a gold mailer headed your way. It's time for the Hobby What's Up, where we go around the hobby world and tell you all the latest news and breaking stories from the hobby we love.
What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up?
What's up? The price of UEFA Sapphire Chrome Soccer, the exclusive from Topps for Montgomery Club members, eclipsing very close to $1,000 a box. This is a box that has 32 cards, no autos. I got my 2. I'll be honest with you. I sold one at around $500. I still have the other one, and I'm, if you know anything about me, soccer's not my thing, and so this will be moved. It's just, full disclosure. When do I do it? How high will this thing go? I don't know. I got to think this $1,000 range has got to be sort of close to the ceiling. So that's where I'll probably go with it. And if I sold it for that, you're looking at $1,500 for 2 boxes that cost $160. And it's just a crazy time in the wax world right now. It truly is. And but take advantage of it. That again, you sell at these levels, and then you can put that money right back in the hobby. The first set of the 2021 Montgomery 582 Club is live. I got mine the other day, 20 cards. It's got some rookies in it. The rookies are Kyle Lewis, Mike Brosseau, Trent Grisham, Nico Horner, Aristides Aquino, and Austin Nola. You got your normal Trout, Acunas, Bellinger, and that. They're nice looking cards. It does contain an auto. Mine was Verdugo from Boston, Alex Verdugo. So not a bad start out the box. Again, was fortunate to re-up. I know they had their snafu, but Topps made it right. And the first set is live. And if you haven't got it yet and you're a member of the Montgomery Club, check your mail. Should be there any day now. Another auction record has fell. Another MJ Fleer rookie, PSA 10. There's 371 PSA 10s, just so you know. But the latest one sold on Golden's auctions. They're killing it still as we head into the new year. This one went for $222,000, besting the previous record of $211,000. So, you do see a little bit. There's been some 86, 87 wax kind of been found. Obviously, it's not prevalent. But there'll be a few more Jordan rookies, probably maybe getting that 10 moniker. But I tell you what, that's a lot of cash if I had one. I don't, obviously, but I'd probably be going to auction with that. The Topps Rip Party is back as the 2021 flagship gets ready to release. It's going to occur on February 9th, an actual day before the product releases to the general public. It's the 70th anniversary of Topps. Boxes are going to have 24 packs in them, 14 cards. Back to the Rip Party. It's not going to be, obviously, like last year in the Texas stadium with COVID. It's going to be private and filmed and broadcast through Topps' social media. There are some breakers privately invited. They're going to run it. I don't know all the details, but they're going to run it like a competition amongst themselves. There'll be some special guests. And so it'll be a lot more low key than last year's event, mainly due to the pandemic. So that'll be February 9th. They're going to have some 70th anniversary cards and ripping through the decade. So they're actually going, from what I've gathered, they're going to rip packs besides the 2021 product. They're going to go back and rip some older wax as well, just to celebrate the 70 years. So the Rip Party scaled down this year due to COVID. Upper Deck has announced their SP Game Used golf release will be the second one of the 2021 year. It will release in May. The first one will be Upper Deck Artifacts Golf. But the SP will be a 5-card hobby box containing 2 hits, autographs or relics, 2 base cards, and 1 additional option, which either will be a hit or a base card. 50 cards in the set, offering 25 veteran and legends cards and 25 rookies. Also limited parallels and signature cards. So, you know, the way the hobby is right now, Tiger Woods will be in it. It is going to be a hot product. It'll be interesting to see if somehow they can't get Tiger's son in there. I think that would be probably something that they might try to do, as he recently played with his dad on in a tournament, father-son thing, did very well. And so it's apparent he's not going to be far behind his dad as he probably starts a golf career here in a few years. So, golf may be the next big thing. We see what the Tiger Woods rookie cards from Upper Deck, especially graded versions, have ballooned up to. It's just going to be more of that, and maybe more attention brought to golf cards. We see, right now it's anything. It's soccer. It's garbage pail kids. It's non-sports, and so golf is Upper Deck's getting in with the golf again, and smart by them because they're gonna do very well, and you can state that ahead of time. And so I believe they're gonna have 5 releases in the year of 2021. All right, that's going to be it for episode 110. First off, thank you out there listening to not only this show, but like I mentioned in my sort of goals rant, you've really taken on Hobby Quick Hits and consumed it, downloaded it, and I thank you for that. And I constantly thank you for really making this show what it is. And I'll do that every episode at least once. And so thank you out there who've made Sports Card Nation what it is today. Want to thank my guest, Mr. Bob Kendrick, president of the Negro League Baseball Museum. Brought his insight. Great guy doing great things for the sport and for the community. And glad he gave us some time and was very generous with his time. Great conversation. I have fun in all my interviews. I really do. I know I don't say that as lip service. I don't care if I'm talking to, 9-year-old Parker Frederick King or I'm talking to Mr. Bob Kendrick like we did on today's show. I enjoy this hobby and the people involved in it in the sports world. And I look forward to every interview, but I really, really did enjoy, speaking with Mr. Kendrick, talking about some of that stuff. Very fresh news with the decision from Major League Baseball and Commissioner Manfred. Not a big Commissioner Manfred fan, full disclosure, but this was the right decision. It was long overdue, and I'm glad for the Negro Leagues. I'm glad for the players that played their hearts out and enjoyed the game and didn't get the opportunity to play, with peers, and when I say peers, I mean of all, races and didn't get to show, their abilities alongside them. And many, like I talked with Mr. Kendrick, a lot of those those Negro League players were in some cases reportedly better than some of the Major League players, and would have been great to prove that on the field. But at least the league has recognized that that's a professional league, and all those things should count. And glad to see it. A little bit late, but as the saying goes, right? Better late than never. And so it was a good decision. Maybe probably one of the best things Commissioner Manfred's done thus far in his early career as commissioner. So again, I want to thank Mr. Bob Kendrick for coming on and really sharing some time with us and sharing some of that, stuff you may not hear on another show, quite frankly. And his appearance really wasn't hobby related. We didn't talk about cards, but we talked about things that relate to the card hobby, the players that played the game. And I think that's important. If there wasn't sports, there wouldn't be sports cards. Just common sense. So happy to have Bob on and get to conversate with him. Really, really a true joy to do. So with that being said, we're going to kind of come to close some closing notes. Again, Hobby Hotline every Saturday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern, rotating host. Another show I really have a blast and fun with. We got 8 or 9 hosts, I believe, off the top of my head. Some great people, and Dr. Beckett's a part of that show, and it's really, really a pleasure to do. We've got it on now. It's we make about one appearance a month, and that's good. It keeps it sort of fresh, and We appreciate it. So, again, thank you everyone out there. Pertaining to 2021, I want to wish everybody a great year. Have a great year. Whatever you do, whatever milestones or goals you set, I hope you reach them and surpass them. I'm having a blast in this hobby. I'm blessed with the shows. And that's what it's about. If you're passionate about something, have fun with it. When it's not fun anymore, that's an issue. And so have fun with whatever you're doing. I hate to say it like this, but, life can be short, it goes quick. And, you want to have, I know there's serious times and there's going to be down times, but, have as much fun across the board as you can. That's what I'm trying to do. I hope some of that rubs off, out there, and that's what it's about. So my door's always open. Any questions, you need help, have a question, a concern, I'm more than happy to respond to you. Enjoy the hobby. It's a fun, especially we're still in pandemic times. It's a great outlet, a great release, something to kind of take our mind away from those mundane, not so great things that we're dealing with. And that's what it's about, whatever it is. And for us, it's the hobby. Enjoy it. We'll see you in 7 days. God bless. Take care.
So stay with me, baby. I got plans for you. This is the time.